Hello everyone. Welcome to the third and final webinar in this 3-webinar series that Springer-Nature is conducting in collaboration with DeLCON Consortium. My name is Alpana Sagwal. I handle the post-sales marketing activities for Central Asia at Springer-Nature. Thank you so much for joining us today, and for those of you who joined us quite early, we are really apologetic for keeping you waiting for 2-3 minutes. But I hope you all understand that when the time is 2:30, then there are some people who start logging in at 2:30. So we give them a buffer of 2 minutes. But again, sorry for keeping those waiting who joined us very early. And for those of you who could not join the first 2 webinars in this series, since this is the last one, so I would like to mention a brief about what we organized. It was a 3-webinar series in collaboration with DeLCON. DeLCON is a DBT Life Sciences Consortium. The theme of the series, as you can see on the screens right now, is all about scientific publishing, trends, nuances, tools, ethics, etc. The first webinar was on the topic Nuances and Tools of Scientific Publishing, and we also covered trends in publishing in that session, where we had a team, the global leadership team of Springer-Nature, especially from the Biomedical and Life Sciences journals. They delivered the whole webinar. The second webinar, which was on 9th November last week, was on the topic abstracting and indexing, how to get indexed and how to increase research impact. This was conducted by Ms. Sonal Shukla, who is the abstracting and indexing head at Springer-Nature. Both these webinars received very positive feedbacks from the research community, and these were attended by more than 2,500 attendees. I would like to thank DeLCON authorities, Dr. D.D. Lal, DeLCON coordinator and administrator, for giving us this opportunity to conduct these online events for our research community. This webinar series has been a great success by being a value add for the researchers. Well, Dr. D.D. Lal is here with us, and he will be talking about he will be giving you a welcome address, and we'll talk about this consortia and the NBRC labs in a while. Before that, I would quickly like to tell you about today's webinar. As you can see on the screen, the topic of today's session is Publishing Ethics in Biomedicine and Life Sciences Research. And we have with us Dr. Maria Kowalczuk, who is from the Research Integrity team. And I'm sure she will provide you some good insights and new angles about ethics. So before I move forward and invite Dr. Lal, I would quickly like to tell you about some session protocols. And I tell them every time, but for those of you who are joining us for the first time, so I would like to mention that we have kept all of you on the mute mode for the seamless conduct of this webinar. And I request you to use the questions or the chat button. There's a panel like this, which you're seeing on your screens right now, and that has a chat box option. So please put in your queries there, and do not wait until the end to post your queries or questions, because I have my colleague Varghese, who is the account manager sales in South India. He's managing continuously the chat box, and we will have the questions ready for the speaker when she starts the Q&A round. That way we have more time for Q&A. So please do not wait till the end. Whatever queries come in your mind while the speaker is delivering the talk, please put on there at the time. We have one poll in the second session today. We will be running that, and we request your participation. And needless to say, please put off all the applications running on your browsers so that you do not face any network or bandwidth problems. Moving on with the flow, quickly telling you the agenda of today's event. We have the welcome address by Dr. Lal, who is the DeLCON coordinator and administrator. Then the main session, as I mentioned, will be delivered by Dr. Maria. She is a research integrity manager from Springer-Nature. She will deliver a talk of about 45 minutes. The topic is publishing ethics. Then we have a Q&A round with her, which will go up to 30 minutes. Later, I will show you the platform demonstration of nature.com and Springer Link, and how you can access content there, and what are open access content we have on these platforms. And the day ends with the vote of thanks by DeLCON authorities. So this is how the agenda will flow. Now I would request Dr. Lal to present the welcome address, and I think you have unmuted. Yeah, sir. Please carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alpana Sagwal. A very good afternoon to all honorable dignitaries, participants, faculty, scientists, researchers, DeLCON nodal officers, library professionals, students, and other participants. I welcome you all. I am Dr. D.D. Lal, DeLCON coordinator and DBT for the DBT e-library consortium and head of the NBRC library. Gurgaon, Manesar. And nowadays, the online e-library is the only medium where we share our experiences and learn the new skills and techniques through the webinar, which is an effective mode of learning. And the government has taken so many initiatives for the online learning and e-learning. Now, I again welcome you all on the behalf of NBRC DeLCON, Springer-Nature, in this webinar on publishing ethics in biomedicine and life sciences research, which is an important topic for today. In this webinar, the speaker will cover about that, exploring publishing ethics with the specific focus on the research in medicine and the biomedicine and life sciences. Discuss the main type of issues that may arise, such as plagiarism, author dispute, data fabrication, etc. Focus on issues specific on medical research, such as ethics approval and informed consent, animal research, such as 3R principles. She will also discuss the greatest challenges that are focused by editor and publishers and how to overcome with these challenges. We have invited an eminent speaker, Dr. Maria Kowalczuk, Research Integrity Manager, Springer-Nature London, and from Springer-Nature for this webinar. Ms. Alpana Sagwal, Accounts Development Manager, Springer-Nature, will introduce about that speaker. As you may be aware that this webinar is jointly organized by Springer-Nature, NBRC DeLCON, and here I would like to give some small information about that NBRC and DeLCON Consortium. So can you please let me share the website of NBRC and DeLCON. So is it visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So the NBRC is the National Brain Research Center, which is an autonomous organization of Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, situated in Manesar, Gurgaon, Haryana. The mandate of NBRC is pursuing basic research to understand the brain functions in the health and disease, and generating trained human resources with the capability to carry out interdisciplinary research in the neuroscience, promoting neuroscience in India through networking among institutions across the India. We have two types of program. One is PhD in neuroscience, another is integrated PhD and MS in neuroscience. So there are 18 DBT institutions in all of our country, and we are the also NBRC, which is a deemed university for the DBT institutions. So this is the website which you are looking here, and mandate and vision is already given here. Our director is Professor Neeraj Jain, and if you go through that all website, our website, NBRC website, www.nbrc.ac.in, you will see the all details, what are the facilities available here. We have that lab facility, we have that laboratory, we have that animal house, we have a student campus facilities, basically all the facilities. Suppose that hostel is there, canteen is there, so all equipments, latest equipments, if you see, the latest equipments is also there. So like 3 Tesla MRI, so this is the latest advanced version of magnetic resonance imaging available in only few places in India. So now I'm going to share about that DeLCON Consortium. So further, this DeLCON Consortium, which is that National Consortium for that Biotechnology, or the Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, which mandate is to promote better, faster and cost-effective way for that providing the information resources throughout the India to the member institutions. Avoid duplication of subscription, rational use of funds, and sharing the electronic access of the library resources to the consortium member. Currently, there are 35 member institutions. You will see here, there are 35 member institutions. Is a part of our consortium, DeLCON Consortium, across all over India. There are 21 publishers, and if you see that resources, we have 1000 plus online resources. So they all are getting these online resources through this link. So all the details here we have given. So all the resources you can see here. So thank you so much. And before the presentation by the speaker, I would like to request all of you to kindly mute your speaker mic and listen carefully without any disturbance. Thanking you all for your interest, patience, and participations. Now I welcome our eminent speaker, Dr. Maria Kowalczuk. Now I hand over to the Alpana Sagwal, Accounts Development Manager, Marketing, Central Asia, Springer-Nature, to kindly introduce her, and then after our eminent speaker will start the presentation. Over to Alpana Sagwal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for a warm welcome address and also showing us the websites of NBRC and what the great work the lab is doing, and also apprising all the attendees about the DeLCON website and other related aspects. Thank you so much, sir. And you've already given what Dr. Maria is to present today, but yes, you're right. I would like to introduce the speaker. So let's delve on to the first session. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's just get on with the first session. That's, as I mentioned, publishing ethics. So before I hand over to Dr. Maria for the virtual stage, I would be introducing her to all of you. Well, Dr. Maria obtained a PhD in bioinformatics and genomics at the University of Wrocław, Poland in 2002, and held a permanent position there. In 2006, she joined BMC as an in-house editor for a number of BMC series biology journals. In 2010, Maria moved to the Biology and Medical Editors team. In 2014, she was appointed Biology Editor in BMC's Research Integrity Group, which in 2017 was restructured to become Springer-Nature Research Integrity Group. In her current role as a Research Integrity Manager, Maria oversees a team of research integrity advisors who support in-house staff and external editors of Springer-Nature journals and books in ensuring adherence to editorial best practice and standards in peer review. Maria continues to take part in debates, meetings, and conferences related to research integrity and publication ethics. She's also a co-editor-in-chief of the Research and Publication Ethics section of Research Integrity and Peer Review. Thank you so much, Maria, for accepting the invitation. She's also delivered one more talk earlier for India, and it has really been a pleasure at that time. And I'm so glad that you accepted this invitation again. And then all is set. So I'm be making you presenter now. Dr. Lal already covered in brief what you will be saying. More people will hear today. And to all the attendees, as Dr. Lal mentioned, please be very careful when you are listening. Please put off all other applications. Because a lot of information is on the way. Hearing about ethics from the integrity team is like learning, hearing from the horse's mouth. So I hope you all benefit in some way or the other. Thank you so much. So Maria, I'm making you presenter and you can share your screen.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation and this opportunity to speak to this wonderful audience today. Thank you very much, Alpana, for introducing me, and thank you, Dr. Lal, for introducing the topic. So I have delivered a presentation a few weeks ago also about basics in publishing ethics. So for those of you who participated in the previous webinar, this webinar will also cover the basics, but with a much stronger focus on biomedical science, medicine, and life sciences. This is the summary that Dr. Lal has kindly provided. So this is included here just for the purpose of those of you who will want to look at the slides later. So what I will cover today is starting with the basics, what publication ethics is, and how it is decided what best practice should be, how this consensus is reached, and then how the general principles are translated into guidelines for editors and authors, what ethics issues we see at Springer-Nature, what we do to prevent them, specifically related to human research and animal research, how we detect, investigate, and prevent misconduct, what challenges we meet along the way, and then some hints and tips for our authors, what you can do to avoid the pitfalls, avoid ethics issues, and how institutions can support the authors in conducting responsible research. And then to finish with a way forward, which I believe should be more collaboration between all of the stakeholders, because I believe all of us have a role to play, whether we are a researcher, whether we are a librarian, a publisher, an editor, or a reviewer in all our different roles, which I'm sure many of us have more than one role to play. Publication ethics has been very nicely defined as a set of common rules among authors, editors, reviewers, and publishers to protect integrity of the scientific record. So as you can see, there is no mention here of fraud or of misconduct. The focus is very much on integrity of the scientific record, so that our readers can trust what they read in our journals and in our books. And those rules are based on consensus that has been achieved between editors, publishers, and very much informed by the research community that we work very closely with. There is an organization called Committee on Publication Ethics, which brings together editors of different journals, but also different publishers, reaching out beyond the medical field, reaching out to all scientific fields, and also reaching out to researchers working in the humanities and social sciences. And increasingly, COPE is also reaching out to research institutions and to funders, so that all of the stakeholders can have some input into defining best practice guidelines. So COPE is very much committed to education, to influencing through providing resources and support for members and fostering professional debate in the wider community. So COPE is not the ethics police, it's more of a organization providing guidance and support. And Springer-Nature as a publisher is a member of COPE, and also all of our journals are members of COPE. So we follow COPE guidelines in dealing with ethics issues. And so COPE has developed 10 core practices, and you can see them listed on the right-hand side. So as you can see, those practices cover all aspects of publishing, so not only specific issues such as authorship or conflict of interest, but they also look into intellectual property or journal management or peer review process, so how journals are run and also how post-publication issues are resolved. So this is quite broad. And those core practices are very helpful to guide us in addressing specific issues or in developing specific policies. And so what about clinical research? COPE does not really provide very specific advice on different subject areas. So I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the Declaration of Helsinki, developed by the World Medical Association. So this is the ethical basics for any research which involves human subjects. But then on top of it, some more specific guidelines have been developed. So for example, the Equator Network has developed very useful guidelines and checklists for reporting of medical research. And they now are also including different guidelines on preclinical research and animal research. So this is very comprehensive. This website has hundreds of guidelines, and they are very useful in planning your research, preparing your research, and then writing your manuscript, because when you follow all of the checklists and guidelines, your manuscript will practically write itself, because there are all the details listed which you need to include. And also those guidelines will provide an ethical framework for conducting your research. And we are also guided by best practice guidelines developed by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, ICMJE, who have created recommendations for the conduct, reporting, editing, and publication of scholarly work in medical journals. And they have also developed very useful authorship principles that very many journals use in determining authorship criteria. And they have also developed guidelines for reporting any conflicts of interest. So they have some, again, some forms which have been adopted by very many journals to report conflicts of interest, and they have also guidelines on duplicate publications and other aspects of medical publishing. And finally, I wanted to mention WAMI, World Association of Medical Editors, which also has regional chapters where editors can discuss different issues and again develop some guidelines and advice for publishing in peer-reviewed medical journals. So based on all of these guidelines, we have created some guidelines for our Springer-Nature journal editors. We have developed the code of conduct that provides very, very clear expectations for how editors should run journals, how they should run peer review, what our expectations are about best practice and requirements. And that's all based on COPE and other guidelines that I mentioned for medical research. And more recently, we have also developed our book editors code of conduct, again, to lay out clear expectations for editors and clear guidance on how they should work to help them to do their best job. And then our authors can find a lot of resources on our websites for our different imprints. So general guidance on publishing ethics, specific editorial policies for every journal that they would wish to submit to, and also some guidance for authors, for referees. And more recently, we have developed also book authors code of conduct to again help our book authors to write very good books and follow all the appropriate guidelines and best practice guidance. But however hard we can work on policies and preparing guidelines, of course, some issues will arise inevitably. So this is where my team comes in. Springer-Nature Research Integrity Group provides support for all our editors at Springer-Nature, both our professional editors, which work for the publisher, and also for our academic editors, which are based in institutions all over the world. And perhaps a single journal may see an issue maybe once a year, so the editors may not be very familiar how to deal with these issues. So my team can provide some help, advice, guidance on the types of issues that you see listed here. So this pie chart presents a breakdown of the issues that we saw last year. We had about 1,000 queries brought to our attention from many thousands of our journals. And as you can see, the largest category that we see is plagiarism or duplicate publication. And I think this is probably because all of our journals have access to plagiarism detection software. So it is quite easy to detect text overlap, to detect potential plagiarism. So these issues are reported and they get resolved. The second largest category is related to data. Could be honest errors, could be some allegations of fabrication or falsification. And then a large proportion of issues we see are around authorship and different authorship disputes. And then the fourth category is related to issues around ethics and consent. So these are issues that will arise around human research. So as you can see, even though at Springer-Nature journals that publish medical research are a fraction of all our journals, and yet we see a fair proportion of issues that arise around ethical issues specific to human research. So I think this is very important to have awareness of what to look out for and what could potentially become an issue. And then the other problems are kind of a smaller proportion of the questions that come to my team. So speaking about the general publication ethics issues, what you should be looking out for, I mentioned plagiarism and text recycling, and then authorship is really difficult for us as editors or us as publishers because we cannot really investigate who did what, which author made which contribution, or how they contributed to writing the article. So this is where we really need some help from the authors and their institutions as well in investigating these issues. So we see instances of, for example, gift authorship, where someone is added to a paper even though they didn't really contribute to the research or to the writing of the paper. Or the opposite issue, ghost authorship, where someone is omitted from the author list even though they did contribute to the research and the paper. And of course, different authorship disputes where authors cannot come to an agreement on the order of authors or who should be an author. So these are quite difficult to resolve. And we also sometimes see what we can only interpret as authorship for sale, where someone is trying to manipulate the publication process to add authors to a publication which is being sold in effect. So that's another form of manipulation that we see in recent years. And regarding data, there could be allegations of fabrication, which means the data was just made up completely, or falsification of data is when the data have been somehow manipulated. Perhaps someone removed some outliers or manipulated the data to maybe fit the hypothesis a little bit better, or beautify the data, which again misrepresents what was actually found in the research. So that's not a good thing. And we also see issues related to data ownership, and this is in instances where, for example, a person did research at one institution, maybe then they moved institutions, they still wanted to publish their research, but didn't quite realize that they do not own the data because the data is owned by the original institution or the principal investigator. It really depends. The legal requirements may be different in different countries or institutions, and authors may not always fully realize. And this is very closely related to authorship issues. Sometimes an author may become very, very frustrated and want to publish the results. It may be difficult to communicate with the other authors. They may decide to go and publish the research, and then it can create a lot of problems if not everything is agreed between the authors and the institution. And we also see problems related to image manipulation. Again, there are more and more technical tools to detect image manipulation, so it means many problems are coming to light. And also readers of scientific literature are becoming more aware of potential image manipulation, are becoming more vigilant and spotting duplicated images or manipulated images, which is then brought to us to investigate and correct. And conflicts of interest, or in other words, competing interests, can also become a problem if they are not declared initially on submission. Conflicts of interest could be financial, when you are sponsored by someone or receive some kind of a fee, but there could be also non-financial competing interests from being involved in, let's say, different organizations or supporting some specific organizations, which may lead to some kind of bias in presenting your research. And of course, conflicts of interest concern all the stakeholders who participate in publishing research. So could be authors, editors, peer reviewers. So all the players should be declaring any potential conflicts of interest quite early on and should be transparent about it. And what we often hear from authors is that they feel a little bit worried that if they declare all the conflicts of interest and the manuscript will be rejected. But in actual fact, the editors generally wouldn't do this. But if the editors are aware on submission about potential conflicts of interest, it really helps to avoid, for example, inviting reviewers who would have the same conflict of interest. So it helps to assess the research more objectively, and then of course it helps the readers to make up their own opinion about the research. So it is really important to declare any potential conflicts of interest or anything that could be perceived as a conflict of interest that could maybe lead later on to you being criticized for not declaring it. So in my opinion, it's better to declare everything up front and be transparent about it, because it's in my experience not really a reason for a rejection, for example. So that's shouldn't be anything to worry about. And then I wanted to say a little bit more about issues related to human research. And I'm sure many of these things will be very, very familiar to you. So I apologize in advance if I'm talking about very obvious things, but these are the issues that we see occurring in our journals, in our papers. So that's why I would like to talk about it in a little bit more detail, because this is based on the real cases that we see. So of course, I'm sure all of you are aware that if you do any human research, you need ethics approval. And it is important to keep in mind that this means not only when you have human participants, but also, for example, when you use human material, human tissue, and in many countries, even surveys also require ethics approval. So if you have any human data in any shape or form, you will very often, almost always need some form of ethics approval, or even to check with your ethics committee. Some forms of research may be exempt, but it's best to check before you begin and then be reassured and have it covered. And also ethics approval needs to be local. So if you have a multi-center study, you will need approval from every place where you have recruited participants, patients, and ethics approval needs to be independent. So any private company that conducts research needs to have ethics approval from an independent body. And what is also useful to keep in mind that, editors may raise concerns, they may have some questions about your ethics approval, about your ethical framework for your study, and editors may ask you for documentation if they have any questions. And at the end of the day, editors will make a final independent editorial decision. Even if you have got ethics approval, in some rare cases, editors may still feel uneasy about the ethics, and they may still decide not to consider a manuscript, so they will make their own call. But of course, in the vast majority of cases, ethics approval is what you need and is what is sufficient. The second important issue is consent to participate. So if you have any human participants or use human tissues, materials, data, even urine samples, or some discarded tissue, you always need consent from the given person to participate in the research or for their material to be used in the research. And that's really very, very important to have informed consent from the participants. And of course, in some cases, your participants may be very, very young, so you will need parental consent or consent from legal guardians. And sometimes you will realize that some of your participants may be from vulnerable populations. Vulnerable in one way or another. So again, it's useful to consider those issues around informed consent from maybe mentally impaired participants, maybe from very old, aged participants, maybe from people who are very, very ill, or people from any ethnic minorities or any kind of minorities, or people who are under any circumstances that may limit their capacity to provide consent to participate. And again, this needs some special consideration on how to go about this. And what is also interesting is that consent to participate could be waived for some studies by the ethics committee. For example, in research in psychology, you may need your participants to not really be fully aware of your psychology research and some study designs. So that could be waived under some circumstances by the ethics committee. And the third issue is consent to publish. And this is very often confused with consent to participate. So that's why I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about consent to publish, because it's a very different thing from consent to participate, like a totally separate issue. And consent to publish is needed in any case where you want to publish any information related to an individual person, an individual patient, an individual participant. because of course we wouldn't publish names or dates of birth, so direct identifiers of course are never published, but sometimes you need to include some indirect identifiers. Sometimes you have, for example, a table with patient 1, patient 2, patient 3, patient 4, and then you may need to include, for example, age, the name of some rare condition that they have, some results of your medical research. And what has been found is that if you include only 3 indirect identifiers, such as age or treatment or the center where they were treated or the name of a condition, just 3 indirect identifiers are sufficient to recognize a person. So that means that if a person is potentially identifiable, you need consent to publish, because otherwise, potentially this person could be identified. And of course, everyone is now aware that all the laws related to privacy and sharing data are becoming more and more strict. And in Europe, we have GDPR, and in other countries, we have other laws protecting privacy. So it is becoming a more and more important issue. So our policy is that for any case report that you would like to publish, you need consent to publish from the person who is described in the case report, because in any case report, there will be enough details for this person to recognize themselves, for the family, very often for the family, friends to recognize that person. So you need consent to publish for any case descriptions, case series, because they will include enough details. And there may be cases where the person is deceased, so then you need consent from next of kin or from a legal representative, depending on the situation. But we cannot really proceed without consent to publish. And if after publication someone complains about their identity being revealed, unfortunately we then have to retract the article, and we have to remove the content of the article for breach of privacy. So that can be quite serious. So that's why I wanted to make this point very clear, that this is needed. And this is something that cannot be waived by an ethics committee, because it's obviously between the person and the publisher. The next very important topic is about clinical trial registration, which is now required for all clinical trials, and most journals will not consider manuscripts where the clinical trial has not been registered. Why is this important? Because we want to prevent duplication of efforts. So if you are planning a clinical trial, but if there is another clinical trial ongoing which is testing the same drug or the same intervention or has the same study design and is testing the same thing, then of course you may be putting your patients through unnecessary risks because this research has already been done or is ongoing. And the second important reason for clinical trial registration is to reduce publication bias, because of course there is very little incentive to publish negative results, to publish results of trials that have not shown anything interesting. But it's still important to register those trials so that, again, people don't repeat the same study needlessly, do not put patients through risk and suffering needlessly because the results are already known. And the reason I'm spending a lot of time on this is also another reason is that you may be doing a clinical trial and not even realize, because the WHO, World Health Organization, has created a very broad definition of what a clinical trial is. So they define it as any research study that prospectively assigns human participants or groups to one or more health-related interventions and then evaluates the effects on health outcomes. So this definition is so broad that sometimes we see manuscripts where the researchers did not quite realize that what they have done actually falls under the definition of a clinical trial and should have been registered. And registering a trial is not a difficult thing to do. There are a number of different registries available. As long as they are publicly accessible, that's fine. Most of them are free. And one point that is really important is that you need to register your trial before you start recruiting your first participants. And this means that your trial is prospectively registered. And this is what most journals will require. Otherwise, they may refuse to consider your manuscript. Because if you register your trial after you started your recruitment, this will count as a retrospective registration of your clinical trial. And some journals will consider it, but not all of them. So this may limit your choices, and this is not ideal. So ideally, you should register your study prospectively. And in animal research, the situation is in some way more difficult than for human research, because animal research is maybe a little bit less regulated, and there are much larger differences between different countries in the requirements and expectations and guidelines. And there are still some research institutions that do not really have a specific animal ethics committee that would provide ethics approval for animal studies, which puts some researchers in a difficult situation. So this is what we hear all over the world. I don't really know the situation in India specifically, but I wanted to mention that if in your institution there is an animal ethics committee, then of course you will need ethics approval for any study involving animals. However, if there is no ethics committee, then we would expect authors to comply with the relevant institutional guidelines at their institution. And then if their institution doesn't have guidelines for the specific type of research that they are conducting, they should look into national guidelines, or in the absence of national guidelines, look to international guidelines. And journal editors will probably be most familiar with the international guidelines. So this is probably the standard that your research will be measured against. So as I said, for human research, also for animal research, the final decision is with the editor. So if the editor has some concerns about ethics or believes that the study wasn't done in line with what is the best practice in the field or internationally acceptable standards, and they may decline to consider a manuscript. If you do research on animals that you do not own, that perhaps on pets or perhaps on farm animals that are owned by somebody else, then of course you need consent from whoever owns the animals. And of course you should always adhere to best practice of veterinary care for any animals. And there arrive reporting guidelines for reporting any in vivo research on animals. This year they have issued a revised version. Version 2.0 is the most recent one that I would encourage you to look at on how to report your research on animals. And I'm sure most of you have heard about the NC3R's principles, the general principles of animal research. So replace your animal research. If there is a possibility to answer your research question without using animals, then that would be the best way to go. Reduce the number of animals if you can, for example, by using better statistical methods or better study design. And finally, refine your research to minimize pain and suffering and stress to the animals. So what about, when issues occur, how do we try to prevent, how do we try to detect issues before publication? So as I mentioned, all of our journals have access to Authenticate, which is a plagiarism detection software. So we do those checks to try to catch any duplication, any overlap before publication, when perhaps it can still be rectified, perhaps the authors can be asked to revise in some cases. So increasingly journals do these checks automatically for every submission, and sometimes the editors decide whether to analyze a manuscript or not, depending on their reading of the paper. And an increasing number of our journals has access to editorial support from our Springer-Nature Technology and Publishing Solution, SNTPS, who will analyze a new submission and then create a report for our editors, for example, flagging missing ethics statement or missing consent statements or high degree of overlap, to help our editors again make good editorial decisions more quickly and process manuscripts more quickly. And then we also check adherence to editorial policies on submissions to identify, for example, duplicate submissions. If we have some individuals which are under investigation for some potential misconduct, we will not ban authors because this is not recommended by COPE. COPE believes that every author should be given a second chance. So, but there are some authors whose submissions we will, very closely scrutinize to make sure that everything is okay if we had concerns in the past. And also we screen for unverified review activity. You may have heard about problems with fake reviewers, and we have had some reviewers suggested who we were not able to verify emails are unverifiable. So we monitor these accounts to make sure that all the peer review that we do is high quality and by verified experts in the field who do not have conflicts of interest with the authors. And we also engage in broader activities to prevent ethics issues and also to increase quality of our publications. So of course we would work to resolve any ethics issues that are flagged specifically on any publication, journal or book. But we also work quite hard to put in place appropriate policies, good editorial policies, good processes to prevent ethics issues, to catch them early. And we innovate in peer review. So our different journals have different peer review models, sometimes quite innovative peer review, for example, looking at the study design first without being maybe biased by positive or negative results. And then after that, looking at the conclusions of the paper. We work on increasing transparency. We encourage authors to post manuscripts on preprint servers. We also have a new service which is called In Review, where authors can share the results very early and also monitor quite closely the peer review process of the manuscript. We work on improving research reporting, so some of our journals will actually require that the authors follow some specific reporting guidelines developed by the Equator Network. And we also have some of our own, some journals have developed their own checklists to increase reproducibility. So what happens when there is an ethical problem? I often get that question, what does your team do? How do you investigate issues? Why is it taking so long? So we follow COPE guidelines when an issue is flagged. So this is an example of a COPE flowchart to show you the process that we go through when a problem is raised. So in this particular flowchart, it starts with a problem being raised by a reviewer or editor about a manuscript. So the problem could be, for example, lack of ethics approval or patient consent, or some question about animal experimentation. So the first step is always to thank the person who raised the issue and say, yes, we will investigate. And then it may take some time to provide a further update. So any investigation will always involve us asking the authors to provide an explanation. And this is what we do, kind of, as soon as the editor assesses that, yes, the issue that has been raised seems substantiated, it seems like a serious problem, a very early step will be to ask the authors, to let the authors know about the concern and then ask them to provide an explanation. And sometimes, as I said, we will ask for some documents, for example, of ethics approval or some consent forms that were used. Of course, we wouldn't ask for any forms that were, with patient signatures or with patient names, but we sometimes may ask you for redacted forms with the names and signatures and details removed, or just an example form that you use so that we understand how you sought consent, for example. And in many cases, the authors, provide a satisfactory answer, and that's the end. We apologize, we continue the peer review process, or the case is closed. Whoever raised the issue gets an update on the resolution. But in some cases, the authors are not able to provide a satisfactory answer, and sometimes they do not respond at all. So of course, if the manuscript is still under consideration, then we will put it on hold and try to investigate further. In some cases, we may ask COPE for advice, although that's not very often because we have our own sort of processes by now developed based on COPE guidelines. And if the authors are not responsive or provide an answer that causes our concern, then in many cases we will contact the author's institution. So this is where institutions come in, and this is where we would really want to work with institutions and collaborate on resolving any problems, any ethical problems or any authorship problems. As I mentioned, we can't really investigate who did what. So this is where we would really like to work with institutions on further investigation and finding a resolution. So this point of involving the author's employer or institution is really crucial for us. And of course, very often institutions can help us, can investigate, and together we can arrive at an answer, at a resolution, and then the authors are updated, and finally the reviewer or whoever raised the question will be updated about the outcome. But a bit of a challenge that we come across is that sometimes institutions do not respond, or they sometimes are not able to help us. Institutions, of course, conduct their own investigations. Sometimes they are quite focused on potential misconduct. Sometimes they are not able to share the outcomes of investigations. So yeah, it then leads to a little bit more delay in trying to find a resolution to a problem. So if the institution isn't responding, we sort of try to find alternative contact details. We keep on chasing, as COPE is advising, to try and contact the institution if we can. And then if that isn't helping, then we try to see if there are some other authorities sort of above the institution. Is there any other body, governing body, that perhaps could help in investigating the issue or resolving it? So in different countries, there are some bodies that possibly can help with that. But as you can see, these cases can take quite some time to resolve. Sometimes are very complex, difficult, involving obviously potential misconduct, and can have quite an impact on people's careers. So this is quite serious, and we take it seriously. So it may take some time to resolve. So possible outcomes once the editors have assessed the claim, all the evidence and the author's response. Of course, in some cases, the author's explanation is sufficient, and that's the end of it. In some cases, it's possible to correct the article. If it's already published, it's possible to have an erratum, for example, a new figure, or some explanation from the authors to clarify, let's say, the methods. But as long as the whole article is not undermined, it can be corrected. But then in some other cases, it has to be retracted. If the conclusions are no longer supported, then we retract the article to correct the scientific record. So COPE is very clear that we shouldn't retract the paper to punish the authors. So it's not to punish misconduct, it is to correct the scientific literature. And there are some cases where it's not possible to get sufficient evidence that the paper is entirely undermined, but we still feel that our readers should know about some concerns that have been raised. So we publish an editorial expression of concern. And our editors are not alone in dealing with these issues. So every journal has its dedicated publishing editor who will support the editor-in-chief in resolving any issues. And then a second line of support is my team. So any issues that are quite complex or difficult will get support from my team. But of course, there are numerous challenges. First of all, it's not easy to establish whether what is reported in the paper is accurate. So this is what we will investigate in the first place. Sometimes we need to conduct post-publication peer review if some new issues are raised after publication. And if serious issues are raised about a paper, we will attempt to contact all of the co-authors to get their point of view, to get some explanation, some insight. And that can be a challenge, especially if it has been a few years since publication. It may be difficult to find contact details because, of course, in the usual process, we correspond with the corresponding author. We have one contact person throughout the peer review process and publication process. but then in some cases, especially with authorship disputes, we need all of the authors to agree to an authorship change, for example. And if we can't get that, then we can be quite stuck. And of course, it is a real challenge to establish whether any problem is due to an honest error or perhaps lack of awareness of what standards should have been followed, or perhaps could be even intentional misconduct. But as I said, we are not very strongly focused on whether it's honest error or misconduct. We are very much focused on whether the paper needs to be corrected or whether the science is sound. And regarding misconduct, we would like to engage with institutions to leave it up to the author's institution, the author's employer, to establish whether there was misconduct and what should be the sanctions for any authors engaged in misconduct. And then what we want to know as editors and publishers is whether we need to correct the article. And sometimes even as we work together with institutions, it's not always clear where the responsibility lies for resolving different issues or different aspects of the case. So that's another challenge. I believe we all have some responsibility, but in particular cases, it may be difficult to come to an agreement of who makes the decision. Obviously, the editor makes the final decision about the publication, about the published paper or submitted manuscript. But some issues are kind of harder to pin down in some cases, and it's not not only in cases where there is confusion, but also sometimes we see quite sophisticated ways in which authors try to manipulate different aspects of publication process. So what can authors do? How can you avoid the pitfalls? So the take-home message that I would like to leave with you is to consider publication ethics early on, as early as possible. So of course, obtain all the necessary ethics approvals and consent to participate and to publish. And really do agree authorship as early as possible. Have some open conversations, good communication about future authorship, who will, the order of authors, who will be the lead author, who will be the last author, and so on. It's really crucial to try and agree it very, very early to avoid then potential disagreements and confusion. Of course, look into the relevant reporting guidelines to help you prepare the paper, and then make an informed decision on where to submit, because the journals can differ quite a lot in what they cover. So some journals will be very specialized in scope, some journals will be very broad, some journals will be selective, have a very high threshold, some journals will be more inclusive. Journals may also differ in the authorship criteria that they use. They will, of course, expect you to disclose competing interest and to have all the appropriate ethics and consent statements. They will have maybe different guidance on how to phrase those statements. But a very important point is that journals differ quite a lot in requirements regarding data sharing. So if you have any restrictions to sharing your data, you need to look quite carefully what the journal is expecting regarding data availability and data sharing. And of course, journals also differ in peer review policy. So it's good to pick a journal where you are comfortable with the process, whether you prefer the double-blind peer review or open peer review, or just be aware of what the process will be. And so what about institutions? So last year I participated in the 6th World Conference on Research Integrity, which presented the Hong Kong principles for assessing researchers. And this is what researchers have developed to sort of guide the institutions, help research institutions to minimize perverse incentives and questionable research practices or even misconduct, and to recognize and reward good behaviors that lead to trustworthy researchers. So there are 5 principles that they have presented to help institutions give better incentives and assessments. So assess responsible research practices from conception to delivery, so including developing the research ideas and designs and methodology through execution and effective dissemination. Value complete reporting, so being transparent about the research and also reporting also negative results. reward the practice of open science, which also means open methods or open data. This is very good, and this helps reproducibility. So that should be something that is rewarded. And also acknowledge a broad range of research activities. So also replication, innovation, translation, and other research activities. And also recognize other essential tasks such as peer review of manuscripts or peer review of grants, and mentoring and supporting early career researchers and knowledge exchange. So these are the principles that should help to reduce those perverse incentives. And so my last slide is about the way forward, because I believe we all play a role, whether we are an editor, a publisher, a librarian, or a person leading an institution or leading a division or doing research in any field. I think all of us should be raising awareness about research ethics and publication ethics, and all of us should be following the policies and best practice guidelines that are relevant to what we do in our different roles, and make it part of our culture. Essentially, not follow best practice because we are afraid of the consequences, but follow it because of who we are. So it's part of our culture. And when any issues arise, let's communicate, let's try to get them resolved, let's investigate together, and be transparent, while of course protecting confidentiality where it's needed. And I think there is room to collaborate, for example, via COPE, who is very open to all the stakeholders and increasingly reaching out to researchers, institutions, funders, and also working with journals and publishers at the same time. So thank you very much for your attention. That's all I wanted to say today, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was a wonderful presentation and giving perspectives from all angles. Just being cognizant of the time, you already have some questions with you. I will take the presenter rights from you, and you may check your emails.
Yes.
There have been a set of questions that's being sent to you. You will start the question answering round so that we can answer as much as possible in the half an hour you have.
Yes, so I have the set of 10 questions. So the first question is from Mr. Kumar about, do the publishing ethics in life sciences differ from social sciences? So I would say the general principles are the same, but of course in life sciences we have all the considerations about human participants, and I think what sometimes researchers in other fields, they may not fully realize that, they may also be involving human participants in social science research in different ways and forms. And, we will often ask, like, have you got ethics approval? And they may have not thought of this. And of course, there are some specific guidelines that have been developed, for example, for ethnobiology research or for research in some specific communities. So I think it's good to get some interest in your field, and COPE has recently published an interesting paper about ethical issues in social sciences. So I would encourage you to take a look at that COPE publication. There is a presentation somewhere on the COPE website on this topic about what ethical issues are kind of more prevalent in the humanities and social sciences. So I think that's an interesting read. The second question is from Ms. Nimisha. In the literature, there are many review articles written by authors on the same topic, for example, polymer drug delivery. So is it acceptable to write review articles on exactly the same topic that has been published? This is a very good question, and I think the answer will very much depend on the journal. So some journals will be keen to publish updates to reviews. For example, if there is a very good review, but several years have passed, there is new research, there is a need to update this review with some new results or new insights. Some journals will want to look at this. Some other journals that are more selective may not be interested. They may say, we would like to have something on a hot topic now, which hasn't been reviewed before. So it varies journal to journal. And of course, if you write even an updated review, you need to be very clear about any text overlap with the previous publication. Ms. Monisha is asking, when we submit a research article in an index journal for publication, during the submission process, the journal is indexed with Scopus or Web of Sciences, but during the publication time, the journal is removed from indexation. How to avoid the situation? So I think, I mean, this isn't exactly a question about publication ethics. It's more about picking the right journal, which may change, you know. If your manuscript takes a year, let's say, to be peer reviewed and published, then of course the impact factor may change, or the journal may stop being indexed. Or, but to be honest, I'm not sure how to avoid this situation. Of course, you want to publish with sort of established journals, but some journals for some reason stop being indexed, and I'm afraid I don't really have good advice for that. It's something that could potentially happen to a journal. Ms. Satyendra is asking how to check plagiarism by editor. So editors have access to plagiarism detection software, and this software produces a report which shows overlap with published sources. So editors have access to this, and they can do these checks. I think authors can, some authors use plagiarism detection software as well, for example, Turnitin, to check that, you know, that they have avoided any overlap. So that's another possibility. Dr. Abdul is asking what are good practices for research publications. So I would advise that you look into COPE website and COPE guidelines, and they are quite comprehensive, and you can also see the different topics depending on a specific question that you may have, or a specific topic. But COPE, the website is publicationethics.org, will have those general guidelines. Mr. Sanjeev is asking, suppose while going through article, if we find some relevant information in review of literature of that article, if we use that particular piece of information as such with proper reference, will it be plagiarism? So I would say plagiarism is copying somebody else's work and then presenting it as your own. So I would say it's a lot is about transparency. So if you want to, you know, include some text that was published before, it's best to include it in like quotation marks. If you need to quote some text, include it in quotation mark, include a reference. It's not enough to copy and paste and just include a reference, because then it may be understood, you know, that you wrote it yourself and then referenced it. So this could be seen as plagiarism. And of course, if you copy and paste a big portion of text, again, this could lead to copyright issues, right? Because you could be breaching copyright. So I think the best way forward is to rephrase, rewrite text, or put it in quotation marks quite clearly. And then again, in different journals, different editors may give you further guidance on whether something actually needs to be rewritten or whether it can be left as a quotation. But transparency is the key, to be really clear whatever text was taken. Even if you are reproducing text from your own previous publication, you should be very transparent that this was published before and this is reproduced here. And of course, again, if you published, let's say, in a subscription journal, then the journal will have copyright to that text. So if you need to reproduce figures or tables or large portions of text, you may need to check and get permission from the previous publisher. If you publish open access, the copyright is with you, so there is more flexibility, but you still should be very, very transparent about reproducing any text or figures or tables, and be clear with referencing and quotation marks. Mr. Aniban is asking which tool is used to detect image reuse or falsification. So there are several different tools under development. There is no one single tool. Very often it is detected just by by the human eye, and some tools are being tested, but there is no official or prevalent tool that is used by most people. It's still work under development. Dr. Dilip is asking, could you once again describe gift and ghost authorship? So these are the issues with like proper attribution of work that was done. Gift authorship is when someone is being given authorship without having really done the work. So having someone hasn't really contributed to the research, hasn't contributed to the writing, but maybe in some places people will include the head of department as a co-author, or they will include someone who is perceived to be a big name to increase the chances of the manuscript being accepted. But this is, of course, very unfair, because everyone who is on the author list should have contributed. So this is a poor practice to give authorship to someone who didn't contribute to the research and writing. And ghost authorship is kind of an opposite problem, where someone is missing. Someone is a ghost who is missing from the publication. So a person did contribute to the work, did contribute to the research, had some involvement in writing the paper, but if they are omitted, then again, it's very poor practice to not give credit to the person who deserves credit and authorship. Bijaya is asking, what's the minimum percentage of plagiarism to publish the different research papers? So again, this is very much up to specific editors who are making these decisions. Generally, we do not really prescribe the minimum percentage, because even a small amount of text could be very, very meaningful. So even a small amount of overlap, could be considered as plagiarism in some circumstances. While on the other hand, sometimes you could have a lot of overlap, for example, in the methods, which is acceptable, because if you are using the same method that you used before and you are transparent that you are reproducing this description for the benefit of the readers, but it was published before, then it can be perfectly acceptable. And again, a small paragraph of text could be a big percentage in a short manuscript. And then, a lot of text, several pages could be a small percentage in a book chapter. So that's why we do not advise editors to look at percentage of plagiarism. And I think different editors develop their own way of treating these cases based on the specific field, based on the length of the manuscript in the journal, that are typically published. So there is no agreed percentage. Well, generally, 10% is usually seen as acceptable. Maybe over 30% is seen as very, very suspicious. But we advise our editors to check all reports and make a decision not based on percentage, but based on the actual overlap of what specifically overlaps and why, whether it's by the same authors or by different authors, or whether it's methods, or whether it's results or conclusions, which is of course much more worrying if someone has overlap with those sections. And the last question is from Shaylee. What is the difference between competing interest and conflict of interest? So I think these are it's essentially the same thing. It's the declarations that people make about some things that could potentially bias the way they are presenting or assessing research. So these terms are usually used interchangeably. I would say it's essentially the same thing. Some people prefer one term, some people prefer the other term. Okay, I have webinar part 2 questions. I have 10 more questions in the second email. So Ms. Poonam is asking, in survey studies based upon feedback response, is it necessary to take consent and approval from ethics committees? So I would say, to stay on the safe side, it's good to seek approval from your ethics committee. Your ethics committee may tell you that they are waiving the need to ethics approval, but it's good to hear from them and check with them. Let me just take a drink. Just to avoid losing my voice. So check with your ethics committee. And about consent, it's when people construct surveys, usually at the beginning, the survey says that by participating in the survey, you are providing your informed consent. And then there is an explanation about what the survey is about, what's the purpose of the study, and some details about the study so that any participants can make an informed decision before they participate in the survey, whether they want to take part in research. So the consent process is usually part of the survey, and if they proceed to complete the survey, they sort of tick a box that they are giving informed consent. And I think this is also useful to clarify when you do a survey whether you are going to publish, for example, any quotes or how you are going to present the results, because I think sometimes, people find it useful to publish some quotes from the survey in the paper, but then you also need to make it clear to the participants that what they say could then be used. So it's also part of providing consent, to publish any quotes. The question from Ms. Shilpa is, in survey studies, when participants are from different parts of the country, how to take ethical clearance? So it is actually a very difficult topic that we have tried to find some guidance from ethics committees about. So I think if you are doing a survey within one country, then it's probably okay to have ethics approval from your ethics committee at your institution. But of course, nowadays, it's very easy to do an international survey, right? Everyone is on the internet. You can get participants from different places in the world responding to your survey. But then it creates a bit of a question. How do you go about ethical clearance? And we don't really have a clear answer for international studies or for studies using, for example, social media. How do you get ethical clearance? I think this kind of guidance is still under development, and I think you should again ask your ethics committee to provide you some guidance, and especially that in survey studies you could also be involving some vulnerable populations, people vulnerable in different ways, where you need to be very sensitive about the type of questions that are asked and how how this information will be used, how it will be presented. So I would say the first step is probably to seek guidance from your own ethics committee at your institution. And then you can also take a look if there are some national or international guidance available for some specific type of research that you are conducting. The next question is from Mr. Aniban. What will happen if the author is the patient in a case report? And this is a very, very good question, because actually one of my colleagues at Springer-Nature asked this question to COPE. So there is a COPE case which is called the ethics of self-experimentation. So I don't know if this is the same thing as you mean here, but we had a case where the author experimented on himself and then wrote it up as a case report. And there was an interesting discussion at COPE, and this can be found among COPE cases on COPE website. There is a space with all the different cases, and I think this one was called the ethics of self-experimentation. But of course, it is an ethical issue. Should the author be experimenting on themselves or being the author of a case report? So I think there are some considerations to take into account, and of course the editors will be looking into the sort of medical value of this research and what it brings to medical knowledge, whether it's important to publish. So I think there will be different considerations, but I think it's not impossible, but it would need to have real medical value. Question from Ms. Seema. At my place, there is no ethical committee. Now, what should I do for publication about the data, as Very Good Journal demands approval of ethical committee? I have written consent from all the participants and asking for guidance. So I think it's a very difficult question, because I believe that if there is no ethical committee, then in a sense, you shouldn't really be doing research on human participants without prior ethical approval. Generally, it's not appropriate to get retrospective ethics approval by any ethics committee after the research has been done. I think you might see if there is any like independent ethics committee that provides approval to research, but any approval needs to happen before the research is even started. So I think if it's too late, if the study has already been done, it may turn out to be not really possible to publish it. But of course, it depends on the type of research, whether it was interventional or non-interventional. So it very much depends on what was actually done. But generally, yeah. And again, I'm not sure about how you find an independent ethics committee, or I'm sure some such bodies must exist for, like, let's say, private companies that do research and they need independent approval. But I would say any approval needs to be obtained before the research is started. Mr. Bargava is asking, different plagiarism detection softwares detect plagiarism differently and show different percentage of plagiarism for the same script. Is any gold standard software for plagiarism detection? So yes, in scientific publishing, we use software which is called Authenticate, and we use it because all the major publishers participate in this program. So all the major publishers make all of the content available for Authenticate to search. So for example, when you use a free or a different plagiarism detection software, then this software will only compare freely available content. So if there are articles which are behind subscription walls, or not freely available, then normal plagiarism detection software will not have access, but Authenticate has access to content that has been made available by all the major publishers. So the database that Authenticate is using is very, very large, and that's why it has a better chance of detecting overlap with some articles or books which are normally not freely available. So that's why we use Authenticate. Mr. Sanjeev is asking, is there any condition of minimum number of participant requirements for registration of trials? So not as far as I know. I haven't heard that you need to have some kind of minimum number of participants. But of course, there are statistical considerations. So of course, you cannot have a trial on one person, obviously. But I guess the rest is about power calculations and your study design to have a number of participants that is sufficient to answer your research question. So of course that's all in the study design, but I'm not aware of any minimum numbers anywhere. Miss Krutika is asking, we take approval from Animal Ethics Committee from our institute based on our country's guidelines, but we are often asked to produce international certification related to animal ethics. How can we do that? So I think, editors come from many different countries, so obviously they are not aware, they may not be aware of on a specific countries. Probably they know their own country, and maybe they are aware of international guidelines. I don't know what exactly you mean by international certification. I know that sometimes editors are asking, have you followed these international guidelines, for example, on acceptable tumor size in animals and things like that. But I don't know about international certification, so I can't speak to that. Mr. Francis is asking, under what conditions human trials will be permitted without animal trials? So again, this is a very specific question about study design that I'm sure will depend on the research field that you are working with. So I can't really answer this question, because it sort of depends on the field, and it depends on the practice in the field, because of course the usual practice is to do some experiments on the cell lines and then do your animal experiments before you do your human experiments, so that the risk for the humans is acceptable, because you have checked on animal trials that the safety or efficacy. But I think it very much depends on the field whether research is permitted without animal trials. Mr. Aniban is asking, what is the best type of peer review process, single-blinded or double-blinded? So I feel this is more a question to me that I can speak to, because that's the area I'm more familiar with. So some journals traditionally do single-blinded peer review, which means that the authors don't know who the reviewers are, but the reviewers know who the authors are. And some journals are offering a double-blinded peer review process, which means the authors don't know who the reviewers are, but also the reviewers don't know who the authors are, because the author names are removed. I don't think there is any specific scientific research which would show that one process is better than the other. There have been different surveys, there have been different studies. So when you do surveys of researchers to ask for opinions, then in the opinion of most people, the double-blinded process is more fair, because people perceive it as a better process, because it appears to be less biased, because the reviewers are not biased by whether the authors are famous or from a big institution, or maybe whether the authors are early career researchers, or maybe they are from a less well-known institution. So it's perceived as a better process. But then on the other hand, we know from experience that very often reviewers can guess who the authors are. Sometimes they guess wrongly. Sometimes they can guess who the authors are because they work in the same field. They have read previous papers from these authors, or maybe they have even come across the same paper on a preprint server. So sometimes reviewers may guess, and so the double-blinded process isn't easy to organize. It's not easy to completely preclude reviewers from guessing who the authors are. Rightly or wrongly, they can still be a little bit biased. I mean, personally, I have never been really very keen on the double-blinded process, because I think it's not possible to completely make it impossible for the reviewers to find out who the authors are. And I personally believe in transparency. I think, to my mind, the best peer review process is the open process, where the reviewers know who the authors are, the authors know who the reviewers are, and everyone is accountable for what they are doing, for what they are saying, for being constructive and helpful. But again, different research studies that tried to assess the quality of peer review or the quality of manuscripts have not really shown a very big difference in quality of the actual peer review process, or the quality of the actual papers under different peer review models. So I think there is a lot of room for research here, for finding out more. And I think when you submit your own manuscript to a journal, you need to pick a journal where you are comfortable with whatever process that the journal is doing, whatever you prefer. The last question from Mr. Jivan is how much plagiarism or similarity percentage is allowed by high impact factor journals. So I think it's a similar question to the one we had before. And as I said, we are not really guided by percentage of overlap, and different journals may sometimes have some rules, but it's essentially about the content, what is overlapping with what is what's important, and not really the percentage. So I think we have come to the end of our slot. I don't know if we have any more time for any more questions.
You have five more questions. If they have been sent to you. If you have time, you can take 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So it's 4 o'clock now. Let's find by 4:05, then start the next one. Thank you. You must have received it on your emails.
Yes, I have 5 more questions. So Ms. Kokila Pigay is asking, is ethical committee approval required for spiked plasma samples? I mean, I believe if you have taken samples from human participants, then yes, you need ethics committee approval from any samples taken from human participants. Mr. Jivan is asking how to find journal compatibility as per our written manuscripts. So I think there are some tools online to help you find a journal, best journal for your manuscript. I think you can also be guided on where you see, similar type of research published. I'm sure when you read research which is related to your own work, you can see where it's published, and I think that's one way of finding a journal. Ms. Rosalina is asking, what does ethical treatment of biological sample means in concern with plant, microbes, and animals? So this is a very good question, and thank you for this question, because I haven't really had the time to touch on plant research or microbe research. And I would say with plant research, we generally look at, for example, endangered species, which of course need to be handled with a lot of care, and you need permissions. You also need permissions to collect field samples, especially if, we had a very difficult case where someone wanted to collect samples from some kind of a private property, and then they were accused of trespassing on a private property to collect samples, and it caused a lot of trouble. So having permissions for collecting samples in a specific place, especially also if you are collecting samples in a different country and then you want to bring the samples to your own country, again you need appropriate permissions, because again you could land in a lot of trouble if you bring samples from a different country. And I think the same is for microbe research. Obviously, for some microbe research, there is the problem of dual use of research, where you may need to be careful about whether your research on infectious diseases could maybe be misused by someone. So there are many ethical considerations that unfortunately we don't really have time to go into more fully. So I apologize for that, but it can be found on I think specialized websites. Mr. Nimish is asking if a review article has been published long back and is not up to date, can we write a review article on the same topic by including recent articles in it? I think this is a very similar question to what was asked before. So yes, some journals will consider updated reviews, but some journals may not, so it depends on the journal, but it does get published in some journals. And the last question is from Mr. Syed. How can we rectify if any part of images overlap in two publications that happened unintentionally? So I think if you uncover an issue with an image, the first thing to do is to contact the journal and inform them that this happened, and of course they will ask can you provide us with corrected images? Can you perhaps either repeat the experiment and get the corrected images, or do you have the right images? So some journals will allow you to publish a correction. Of course it depends, obviously, if the images were crucial for your conclusions of the study, the editors may sometimes be a little bit skeptical. They may want to have to see the raw data to make sure that all the data was correct, and sometimes the editors may even decide to check with the institution, because image overlap can potentially mean that something was fabricated. So sometimes the editors may get very, very suspicious about this, but in many cases a correction will be allowed, especially if you are able to provide the raw data and show that this was just an error rather than some form of manipulation. So these were all the questions. Thank you very much for all the questions. Yeah, it's all very good questions, and a pleasure to engage with you and answer the questions.
Thank you so much, Maria. Really, it's a pleasure to hear you always, and I'm sure the attendees must have benefited from the great talk that you delivered. We are receiving great appreciations in the chat box itself, though we do have a survey form at the end, and we'll let you know how our attendees felt about the presentation. Thank you so much for giving so much time and for an elaborative question and answer round as well. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Same to you. So that was Dr. Maria Kowalczuk from the Research Integrity team of Springer-Nature signing off, and she gave, I think, a beautiful and an insightful presentation covering great principles about ethics. I'm really hopeful that you must have benefited from the talk. If you have further questions, you may send a mail to my ID, which I'll be sharing you in the end, and we can try to get some answers for you. Well, we'll just quickly have a platform demonstration, as this is the last of the webinar in the 3 webinar series. So it's an opportunity for me to showcase Nature.com and SpringerLink websites, the platforms where you have to access our content. So just starting off with the presentation. And before I move forward, I would like to just check as to how many of you are aware, because there are a lot of people for whom this is, the access is not available. So I'm running a poll right now. Yeah, I already see the responses. Thank you so much. Whether you're aware of SpringerLink and Nature.com website, well, I'm pretty sure that majority of you should be aware. And I'll just quickly take you a 10 to 15 minutes demonstration, and we will then end the session and the entire series. So putting on this poll for another 10 seconds so that you all can vote. If by any chance you're not able to vote, then sometimes the polling window gets at the back. And you can minimize the main window, my presentation screen, and then you can see the voting window. All right, so I'm closing this, and it is so good to know that majority of you are already aware, so that makes my job pretty easy. So it's really good to know that more than 80% of people are aware of the platforms, which is like a pat on the back of the entire team of marketing and sales, that you are aware of our platforms. And I'm sure that in this lockdown time, a lot of reading is already happening. So just since this webinar series is being done in collaboration with DeLCON Consortium, I would like to mention what all content is available with the subscribers, with the members of DeLCON. In the beginning, Dr. Lal showed the site of DeLCON where the members were listed, and so there you could see that there were like member institutes. All are listed with the name of the DeLCON coordinators. If I tell about Springer and Nature content available at DeLCON Consortia, so for Springer journals, we have 35. You have 35 journals available with you, which is accessible to 14 member institutes of DeLCON Consortia. And in addition to 35 journals, you also have access to 308 journals of the entire Springer Biomedicine Life Sciences collection. I'll be showing you in a while live on the platform, the Biomedicine and Life Sciences collection. And moving on to Nature, you have 33 Nature journals, and we see a lot of usage from the Nature part, because this being a Biomedical and Life Sciences consortia, a lot of content is being read by the readers, by the users from the Nature side of our portfolio. And if I talk about the Nature, 28 institutes have access to Nature journals and Scientific American. So that's what is available with DeLCON Consortia. Now, there will be my attendees and friends who have joined and might be wondering that if you are not part of the DeLCON Consortium, so you do not have to worry if your institute is not accessing to any of the content from Springer-Nature, though we would like you to. We would like the library to access, to subscribe to our content. But I'm very glad and feel proud to share you that we have a lot of content which is open access. So if now, out of the 3,000 plus journals we have, 600 journals are fully open access, which means all you need is only a good internet to read them. And we also have a pool of 2,200 plus hybrid journals which have open access articles, which have the availability and the feature of having the open access articles in it. And I'm also proud to share that we have published 1,000 plus open access books. So there's a lot of content available on the platform for those of the institute readers and the students or researchers whose institute are not subscribing to our content. The platforms, like 84% of you are already aware that the platforms are link.springer.com, and for Nature it is www.nature.com. For Scientific American, there is a website called, since this is a magazine and we have a dedicated website for this magazine, Though if you type on nature.com, if you're on the Nature website and you type Scientific American, it will take you to the Scientific American website also. So these are the platforms. Very quickly telling you about how successful this DeLCON Consortia has been. You can see yourself from the usage here. The Springer-Nature content is being used heavily at DeLCON Consortia members, especially the Nature usage is very high. And if I see close to 3.4 lakh downloads that happened in 2019, and if I've tried to extrapolate it to December 2020, and if this trend continues, it will be more than 4 lakh downloads in 2020. Even despite the ongoing pandemic, the total usage is on the increasing side. So this shows the successful consortia this has been, and how the content is being read, and how the researchers are really serious about what is being offered to them as part of the content. This also accounts for the sound remote access policies at DeLCON and the support provided by Springer-Nature, and also the available options at the member institutes for making the remote access available to you all, so that during this pandemic, during this lockdown, you all can access content from wherever you are. We know what the situation the world is facing. So I would like to briefly tell you about the options that there are, with us, and that's being used very often about remote access. Now, I will tell you my experience in the month of March. In March, when the lockdown really started, we were like flooded with requests from institutes to create the remote access opportunities for the users and the researchers. And that was 1 month, which was really awesome for the entire sales and marketing team at Springer-Nature. And I'm pretty sure that must have happened with all the publishers. Now things are stable. I think everybody is able to access content remotely because that's the need of the hour. But still, since I thought you all are here, I will just quickly tell you how remote access, what are the options available for remote access with Springer-Nature. So one is, of course, the IP authentication via the proxy IPs. Here, the institutes, if they build on a proxy IP, they give us that, and we provide access on that proxy. This is very, very similar to the IP-based access. The only thing is that it is a proxy IP. Then we have an associate user, which is the rights given to the librarians or the information scientists who are the administrator of the account. They can very easily invite any of you to become an associate user by just knowing your email ID, and they just have to put in your email ID from. They have this whole access available to them, and they have to add your. If you can just request your library that I want to become an associate user, they can very easily do it from their Springer Link administrator account. For Nature, we have a token URL access. All you have to do, your librarian has to send a mail to online service at springernature.com, and just that mail, and we will create a magic word login for you, where you can use a magic word or a password, and then you can access the Nature journals. So that's for Springerling and Nature.com. And one last option is the federated access, which many of the consortia are using. I'm sure I think DeLCON also has the same for the in-house members, which is a federated access, a single sign-on, which allows the users to have one credential to access all publishers' content. So this is a software that some institutes buy from outside, and we as publisher host our content over there. So these are the remote access options. I know for some of you this might not be very, very exciting, but this is very important for librarians and also for the right now researchers who are facing some problem in remote access. These are the options available. There might be more options. There's a link down here, and I'll be sharing these handouts to you. You can just visit our sites and know more about these remote access options. You can always write a mail to us or your librarian also, if you aren't able to access the content. Now let me go to the live demo, and I will just show you very, very quickly. It is 4:14. I should not be taking more time. I will just open the websites for you. So I'll first share the nature.com website because that's the most heavily used and website by the Biomedical and Life Sciences research community. Okay, I've opened this, and I hope you are able to see my screen. Okay, so this is the hi Varghese, is the nature.com site visible? Has it come on my screen? Hello?
Yes,
okay,
Alpana,
I don't
it's
see
visible.
Varghese's. Okay, so sorry. Thank you for confirming. All right, so this is the nature.com homepage, and this is full of loaded with information for all of you. Especially, I'm pretty sure the biomedical life sciences community you all know about this website, and you'll be loving to spend time on this. I'll take you through a tour of this homepage, and you see there is a lot of research, news, comments. I'll slowly just go down, and so this is the news and comments section. Then there are research highlights section, then latest review section. Then there's something which is important is the alt metric. So that's something that is interesting to me. So what alt metric does is it just captures whatever is happening, what is being trending in social media. And these are the topics right now which are burning, right, and they are being talked about, and they are being liked, they are being shared on all the social media channels. So altmetric, we have collaborated with this company, and they provide us these insights. So this is also nature.com homepage, and you go down beneath, there are a lot of sections which are very informative. You can see yourself. I mean, you see the section published with us. There's a guide to authors, the policies about open access, and also one important here on the beneath left hand, there are regional websites for Nature China, Nature India. So Nature India is a regional website managed by our who is Shubhra, based in Delhi, and she's editor for this Nature India website, and a lot of content is being published here, this is all open access site. And I would I mean, if you have time, please go here, and it also talks about what's happening in India and also careers from India on science and related fields. Now, at any given point in time, if you're on the home page and if you want to access our flagship journal, which is Nature, it is always listed on the home page, which is here. So you see the current issue, 10th September. This is the home page. If you want to read it, you just have to click on the cover and you go inside this journal. And you can then just browse whatever you want to read this week. What are the news in focus? What is a research article? All comes here. So this is how the homepage of the Nature Journal looks like. Now, going back to the site, quickly I'll tell you, see, there are a lot of buttons you must have seen by now on this nature.com website. But I think the buttons which you need most are the search button. I'm sure everybody loves to do a keyword search. And that's fine also. That's the approach we all should follow, and we have been following it for years. So I'll just quickly show you one or two keyword search. Let's say you have to just write in your search here. Let's say I write the topical issue, burning issue right now, coronavirus. And let's see what Nature has to offer you in this. Now, since it has searched the content, one important thing which I want to tell you and I want to highlight, whenever you search any keyword on nature.com site, on the right hand side, it will give the definition and all about that particular keyword. It will try to define for you what it means and what are the more subjects related areas in this particular topic or any keyword you write here. Now, so once you type the search, you see here, I have so many results which are available. Here, I think this is also a point for me to tell you that Springer-Nature is committed to the research community, and what we've done, we've made the entire research, what is being published on coronavirus, absolutely open access for the research community. So whatever is being published related to coronavirus and COVID-19 disease is being made open access, be it on a Nature journal or a Springer journal or a book chapter or book. So it's all available open access. Having said that, let's just refine the search. How do we refine? For example, you want to read a research article. So there are like news, comments, opinions, correspondence. Let's say we filter it to the research. You can do that. Then you want to see what is being published in last 30 days. Yeah. So we can also do that. We can search it by, and you also want to see if you want, let's say you just have access to a single Nature journal in your institute. So you can also, refine it via Nature journal. So you see from the thousands of results, it's come down to 4 results. So we have 4 articles, original research articles being published on this keyword that I'm showing here. Now, similar to this, I will try to do another keyword search. Then we will go inside, and because after doing 2 searches, I will just show you how an article page looks like. Well, let me take another keyword like biostatistics. Well, this I have taken from the research interest that you all have shared in your while filling your registration forms. Okay. So biostatic. Now, as I mentioned, whenever you just search on this biostatistic term, on the right hand side, you will have the definition of this particular keyword. That's what I was mentioning earlier also. This is a very good feature of nature.com, this website. Again, you can always, filter it with research. You can filter it with the journal. You can also filter it with the date. Let's say I'm just again clicking on the last 30 days. And we can then go inside. So whatever you see is open, it means that this is open access. And you see here, if you can see my cursor, this is scientific report. So this means that this article, which is inter simple sequence repeat markers to assess dash dash dash. So this article is in the journal Scientific Reports, and Scientific Reports is an open access journal. Similarly, the second one, age and life expectancy, is from Nature Communication. And Nature Communication was prior to 2016. I think it was not open access, but in 2016 it was made an open access journal by Nature Research Group. So whatever is open will be written here as open. If I just click on one of them, and I will now show you the reading experience of a article. So it's not a rocket science, very, very easy. If you have a good internet, you can just read. There are sections made here. You can read directly from here. Abstract, introduction. You click on introduction, it will take you to the introduction. Then you click on other topics like results if you want to just read the results. So the results are here. Also, the figures are consolidated at one point here, and then you can view full size image also. It will open up. If you want to view this image in the article, they all will open up like this. So that's also a very good feature. Like on the right hand side, you have an experience where it is on sectionized, and on the left hand side, you have what you want to read. So, and this is the reference side. Okay, and also another thing is when you start reading an article, it will show a blue tab here, which is download PDF. If you go down, this download PDF will stick on the top right like this. And however beneath you go, it will always be there, and you can click here and you can download the entire PDF. Okay, and then another feature is, yeah, here are all the authors of this. If you want to cite this article, you click here, it will take you at the bottom where you know how to cite it. And these are the auth metric, as I mentioned, these are the metrics of this article, like how many views, how many mentions on social media, etc. They all are here. Now I click on cite this article, it takes me at the end part of this article. And so this is how you can download the citation, and any reference manager that you're using, you can cite this. Another last important thing about this article page is the share this article. Now there is a initiative, content sharing initiative, which Springer-Nature was a pioneer in being part of, that is called as Share It. It is a legal way of sharing your research, and it helps increase your visibility. You do not have to rely, even if you do not have the subscription, you can still send this link to your colleagues. You can send it on social media, on all emails, or on multiple platforms. This is a legal way of sharing your content. So I clicked on get shareable link. This is the link I got, and you can just copy this and you can paste it to. You can even send this via email. So whosoever person you send this to will receive the read-only version. They will not be able to download, but they can read inside your paper. So that's about the reading experience of a nature journal. Let's just go back. There's also one more thing. It is 424. Okay, so one important thing which I want to mention is, having showed you the keyword search, there's not one more button, which is this view all nature research journals. So you click here and you can see all the journals from A to Z of Nature Research Group. And you can, if you know that you have access to this main journal, you can just go. Otherwise, you start reading, whatever is available, because if you are able to download the PDF, then it is open access. And let's say I go to Nature Cancer, and I just want to show a journal page to you, something very important. So in the journal page, there is one thing which is if you want to access the content which is inside the journal, the issues and the current issue, the past issues. And there's another tab which is journal information. So if you want to know about the journal, aims and scope, about the editors and authors, etc. So this is all is here. And if you want to submit manuscript, you can click here. It will take you to an online registration form. What I wanted to show you here, why I brought you, this is about a journal. So you can see the current issue, Nature Cancer, on the right hand side, the purple color, beautiful cover. And you just can read everything here, the latest research, etc. But what I want to show you is when you go down, yeah, this is the journal tools. And you have, if you want to recommend this to library, it will take you to our Springer-Nature platform site, where you will have the contacts from all sales and marketing people, and you can contact us and your library accordingly. If you want to set up e-alerts, now very, very important point, please note that you can set up e-alert for any journal. But for that, it is important that you make a free account on nature.com. Without a free account, see, I clicked on e-alert, it took me to a page. So it is just a 2-second process where you have to enter your first name, last name, email, and you have to set a password for yourself. By this, and you agree to the terms and conditions. By this, you will be available, you will be applicable for receiving alerts for these journals. And you have already, if you have a free account, you can log in and you can, then the alerts are set up for you. So that's all I had as far as nature.com is complete. Then I moved to Springer.com, link.springer.com, which is Springer Link platform. I will not spend much time here, just quickly tell you. This is how the homepage looks like. And this is the keyword search. On the left-hand side, as I see this page, I see it in 3 parts. The first is, of course, the top, the keyword search, where you can enter your whatever keywords your research area is. On the left-hand side bottom, there is a browse by discipline. So here you can filter your research via the discipline you are working in. And on the right-hand side, you see all these blue color journals, books, etc. So these are all hyperlinks. So it is, if you want to filter your content via the content type, journals, etc. Now, one quick thing is, if you want to see the journals on a particular subject area with Springer, so click on the journals, and then you can include preview only content. And if you click here, then you will come to know if you have access to this or not. Otherwise, it will show you everything, even if it is locked for you. So click on this checkbox, uncheck this. The moment you uncheck this, it will, so for me, it's not showing a difference because I have access to the entire content. But basis what you have access to, yours will accordingly tell you the number of journals you have. Then you do not need to really struggle or to find out the journal you are having access. It will show you the results which you have access to the full text. You can go inside and start reading. Similarly, you can do for books, like you go inside the books and you can uncheck this and it will show you the books you have access to. In addition to what you have access to, your institute access to, it will also show you the number of open access documents, open access content, be it journal articles or book chapters or books. And now I will tell you quickly what we have in biomedicine. I click on journals and you can click on medicine and public health or biomedicine or life sciences. So there are basically 3 sections it's being divided. And this is all the journals we have. So let me just take you inside one journal, medicine and chemistry research. Yeah. So unlike, when you saw the nature.com page, there were 2 sections. Like one was what is inside the content inside the journal. The other was about the journal. Now here what we have done is the platform is made in a manner that when you click on the journal page, it takes you to the some information about this journal first, like editorial board, aims and scope, journal updates, etc. It will tell you some metrics also. Like you can see here, what's the impact factors and how many days it takes to the submission to first decision, how many downloads have happened in 2019, all these things. So these are some very good insights if you are a prospect author and you want to submit your manuscript in this journal. So you can really see all this here. And if you want to, then after having read all of these, if you want to go and then you can just go and click on volumes and issues, then it will take you to the content, that is the reading content of this. So let me just take the October 2020 issue. So this seems to be a monthly journal, and here you are with all the articles. That's how you click on the first article, and you can see here that the reading experience of an article page on both the Springer link and the nature.com website is exactly similar. You have the same bifurcation, the sections, figures, references here. You have this download PDF tab every time on the top right, and you have these metrics here. It is exactly similar. It has been made exactly the same, so that because it's one umbrella, Springer Nature, though we have different platforms because these were earlier different organizations. And similar to what I showed you initially, the way you have to cite this article, it will take you down. You can have a shareable link, you can share it, and you can also cite it accordingly. So this is how an article page looks like. And moving just before I finish, I will just show you. So any given point in time, if you want to go back to the home page, just click on this Knight logo, Springer link, and it will take you to the main page. I told you we have journals, we have books, we have series, protocols, etc. At DeLCON Consortium, of course, it is a journals consortium and there is access to only Springer and Nature journals, but we do have books also. And if you want to read the books, it is a similar and very seamless experience reading a book on Springer link, and it's really not it's very user friendly, not at all difficult. In fact, our ebooks come in the EPUB format. So if you want to have a reading experience of an open access book, it will take the shape of the device you are reading it. So, and last thing which I want to tell you are the videos. So this is a new content which has come up, which we are working on more. There are 3 subject areas in which we already have videos. So it's like a standalone product, a content type, just like journals, books, it is videos. And we have videos in 3 subjects. One is professional and applied computing, medicine, and business and management. So medicine, I'm sure you all must be looking forward to, and there are many open access videos also. So the videos are made in a manner that the audio is there, the video is there, and then we have the transcription also given at the end. And the sections are just divided maximum 2 minutes, not more than 2 minutes. One video has been divided. So very nice experience you all can have, and there are many open access videos also available. So just to show you again, if you go here and if you want to see all the videos, you just click on view all videos and it will take you to this page. And I also wanted to show in the end that this Springer Link platform is a very user friendly, and it is hosting 10 million scientific documents for you, of course, depending upon what access you have. And here are the videos, 156. So you click on videos and you can also see the results like this, similar to how you see journals, books, etc. So that is all as far as the platform demonstration is concerned. Now just quickly, if you can see my screen, I will not go into these details, but since you all are here associated with me, I would like to show you some value added services that Springer Nature has. I will not really define each of them because I don't have that, and there's a paucity of time, and it will be difficult for me to really cover these, but I want to tell you that there are a lot of services available, especially for authors with Springer Nature, which are absolutely free, and I would like you all to please make use of these services as much as possible. So there's something called a Springer Nature Journal Suggester. And many times when we do these workshops and when my editorial colleagues are connected, and we see a lot of questions coming from the budding researchers that we do not know which journal we should be publishing, we should be sending a manuscript in. So that's one question with the new researchers really struggle. So Springer Nature has come up with a valuable tool, and we are receiving good feedbacks around it. So it is a tool wherein you just have to, enter just part of your manuscript and your title. And basis that, and if you want some other things, like if you want a high impact factor journal, there are all drop down options available. It is a tool. And believe me, when you use it, there is no data recording happening at the back end. We are not saving your data. It is just the software. Yeah. So you just make full use of it. And basis your parameters which you enter, it will show you some results on the journals, and you can go inside the journals, and similar to how the homepage I showed you in the demonstration. Then shared it, I already talked about. Transfer desk is also an interesting service where more about this can be seen in the video, which the link to which I'll share with all of you. It is actually an opportunity if your article is being rejected. So it's an opportunity that you can transfer your article, your manuscript, I should not say an article, your manuscript to some other journal, and which can be recommended by the editors. So this is more on the editorial side. My editors can throw more light on this, but I have brought for you the video of this because the video is self-explanatory. Then we have wide information publishing ethics on our website. Of course, that's on nature.com separately I showed you, and also on Springer.com. Then we have author and review tutorials also on Springer.com, and a service called as Recommended. Recommended is for all the readers who really like to read. And I'm sure you all are doing research. That's why you are connected with us today. And research cannot be done without reading. So what Recommended does is, if you have really logged into this service, it's a free service again, and you just have to put your email ID, Google Recommended on the, just Google Recommended, Springer Nature Recommended, and you have to enter your email ID. And just forget about it. That means you have registered for Recommended, and start reading content on our websites, which is the ones which I showed you just now: Springer-Link, Nature.com, Biomed Central, etc. And after 2 weeks of time, you will start receiving recommendations from this service in your inbox, so in the email ID, in the inbox of the ID through which you register. So it will show you, it is an adaptive algorithm at the back end which sees what are you reading these days, and basis your read, it will throw you some suggestions. And interesting part is that those suggestions are not only from Springer Nature content, they are pan publisher content. Basis, depending upon whether you have access to that content, you can have the full text or abstract. So this is just a in summary of the services. Links to all these services are here. And for videos were available, I have brought the YouTube links also. I'll be sharing these handouts with Dr. Lal, and so that he can forward it to all of you. So this is all about the services that are available. So that's the end of my talk, and thank you so much for listening. And I'm so glad that you were put, and I could not see the number of attendees going down. That was motivating. So this brings us to the end of the 3 webinar series, and I'm really overwhelmed because you have been a great audience in the entire 3 series, especially thanks to those who have joined us in all the 3 series. Thank you so much. A recording of this webinar, as I always mention in my webinars, will be sent to you. We will be sending you e-certificates, and we will request you to fill our survey form in the end. And before I really pass on this to Dr. Lal for the vote of thanks, sincere gratitude to him, to Dr. Didi Lal, and the coordinator administrator, for giving us this opportunity and giving us this way where we could pull up a series like this for the research community in India. And I would also like to thank all the speakers who have spoken in the 3 webinars, my entire Biomedical Life Sciences senior leadership team, the team of abstracting and indexing, and today Dr. Maria. My sincere gratitude to all of them, and my colleagues of the Central Asia sales team for helping me in promoting this event as much as we could, and we can see a lot of attendance in these events. And my colleague, special thanks to him, Varghese. He's the account manager in South India sales, and he's my chat box champion, my co-organizer, who always help in the smooth running of this webinar by way of helping me with the questions. And last but not the least, this series would not have been successful if we would not have had you. Thank you for your participation. Your continuous participation and feedback is very, very inspiring, and it helps us to do more and more for the research community. Thank you so much. So now I would like to invite Dr. Lal for the vote of thanks.
Hello, Alpana, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yes. So just I would like to know when this Springer and Nature has been merged. Basically, we subscribed that Nature from 2000. From the year 2000.
Yeah.
And when we had gone for that consortia concept in year 2008, so we had, the Nature has been increased. So Nature contents are 37, I think so. 37 titles we have subscribed under this DeLCON Consortium. So
So, sir, you are very right. The merger happened in 2015, but Vikas Kumar, he's the director of sales in India and Central Asia.
I think
he's the man behind this course.
Yes, I think it is in 2015. Okay, so because this
2015 the merger happened. Yes, you're right.
Yes, I remember. So this consortia, we have considered 37 titles from the 2009 onwards, and still it is going. And for the Springer 342 titles we are taking under this consortium. Okay, so thank you, Alpana, for brief demonstration about your platform for the Nature and Springer, and you had all shown that how DeLCON is using the contents and how it is useful for that researchers. They are using very much, and that in a lakh they are using in lakh all the contents and all the titles. So it is very much useful for that nature, as well as it is useful for that researchers. The nature contents is always in the brand contents. So every publisher, every researchers and scientists, they want to publish in the nature brand journals, as well as the Springer. So thank you so much. I hope this webinar will be very much useful. And as our speaker, Dr. Maria Kowalczuk, have covered all the issues regarding the publishing ethics, plagiarism, authorship dispute, data fabrications, issues specific for medical research, greatest challenges and faced by that editor and publishers, and how to overcome these challenges. So these will be useful and very helpful for that researchers, those who would like to publish their paper, publish their manuscript, and submit their manuscript, mostly professional researchers, scientists, students, those who are interested to publish in that Nature, Springer. So it is most useful for them. So first I would like to thank you to our eminent speaker, Dr. Maria Kowalczuk. She is based on that London, but she has given time. She has agreed to give the presentation, and it was that excellent and wonderful presentation and speech. My gratitude to Springer-Nature for collaboration. Thank you to all participants, member of Springer, especially Mr. Vikas Kumar, Director Springer-Nature, Ms. Alpana Sagwal, Accounts Development Manager, Marketing Central Asia, Springer-Nature, Mr. Varghese Thomas, for the organizing 3 successful DeLCON Springer-Nature joint webinar. I also thank to our faculty members, scientists, researchers, DeLCON nodal officers, for the all 35 member institutions, library professionals, students for attending this successful webinar. Again, I thank you to all participants for attending this webinar. And now this time is to closing the session. Over to Alpana Sagwal.
Thank you so much, sir. And you rightly mentioned it's really a pride being published in Nature Journal. You are very right when you mentioned that. And so I hope with these 3 webinar series that we have put together and the recordings being made available to the attendees, we would have made some difference to the research community. That's all we strive for at Springer-Nature. We are committed to the research community, and we will be doing that in future also. So to the attendees here who are listening to me, I will keep bothering you with my emails if I have some other webinars which I think would be important to you all. So do not mind my emails coming to your inbox. Thank you so much. Goodbye until you hear from me again. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you.